Part 40. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 395. 389 The last time. Paladin dance. Knight looked at dance and called softly. There are no paladins here, only a despicable synthetic man. Dan's eye looked very depressed. He had already taken off the T-60F power armor and special combat uniform on his body, and was just wearing a simple technical suit from the academy. The workers in white clothes squatted motionless in the corner of the prison. Knight didn't mind either. He opened the prison door directly, walked in and sat down beside Dan's. "Aren't you afraid that I'll tear you apart? Use my power, which is stronger than that of ordinary people." "Yes, it was given to me by the body of a synthetic human." Dan's eye raised his hand and looked at his palm blankly. "I always thought that this strength came from years of unremitting training. Actually, I heard people from the Department of Life Sciences say that the third-generation synthetic humans use artificial cells modulated by human genes. Although they cannot completely replicate the human body, if they exercise regularly and eat more, they can indeed promote artificial intelligence. The muscles have become tougher. So, your exercise is still useful, and the proof is that you can easily kill several third-generation synthetics now." Knight skillfully lit a cigarette for himself, and handed one for Dance. "Do you smoke?" "No, smoking is against the rules of chivalry, and it's not conducive to maintaining your physical condition." "Hee. What rules of chivalry?" "It." Dance laughed at himself, took the cigarette, and asked Ned, who was a little rusty. As he spoke, he took a sip, and the choking smell of smoke made him cough. Knight smiled. "You know what? Smoking is banned in the academy, and I'm almost suffocating." "What are you going to do with me?" Dance asked. Originally, for the synthetic humans who escaped, the academy's approach was to directly brainwash, clear all data, and then put you back into use. Knight said, "But I stopped the brainwashing of you, just saying that the experience of the meeting is helpful to us. But in fact, I just want to hand you over to Boss Yan, who knows better than me how to place you. Let's brainwash me, it's over once and for all." Dance shook his head. "Do you know? The 4 people locked up opposite you, they escaped from the academy, and they hoped that the railway would brainwash them. They would rather be brainwashed by the railway than in the academy." Knight pointed to the opposite. "The 4 synths said that those 4 were the ones who fled to Bunker Mountain before and became the trigger for the Battle of Bunker Mountain, and after the battle was over, Chunyuan sold their personal favors to Knight for military exploits." Dan's eye frowned. Although he didn't ask any questions, it was obvious that he was full of doubts. Knight continued, "Although they are synthetic humans, they prefer to believe that they are human beings. If they are brainwashed in the academy, their existence is still just a tool. But if they are brainwashed by the railway, although they will be implanted if a new memory is inserted, their original memory will disappear, but they will be free, become a person." Dance's expression changed a little. He started to stare at the 4 synthetics. Although he still didn't speak, he was already interested by Knight's words. Knight patted Dance on the shoulder and said, "So you know what? You already have what other synths dream of, which is to be a human being. They are even willing to sacrifice everything for this, even if it is to be another. When a person is alive, his consciousness and memory completely become someone else, and he has to break out of the shackles and become a person. And you already have these. What do you expect?" Dance still didn't speak, just maintained this posture. It wasn't until the cigarette in his hand burned his fingers that he suddenly came to his senses and quickly threw the cigarette butt away. "Look, at least you're still in pain, aren't you?" Knight's wife is a lawyer, and his eloquence is also very good, and he immediately added something when he saw Dance's appearance. Dance raised his head, seemed to have regained some of his spirits, and asked, "Who are you? How did you get in touch with the college? I saw you and Chunyuan at the Cambridge police station before, and I didn't expect that later that's how things will go. Who am I? He, Knight smiled wryly and shook his head. I used to know who I was very clearly. But the events of the past few months have made me less confident. He sighed, stood up and walked towards the outside of the prison, and said as he walked, anyway, think about how you should go in the future. Boss Yan told me about synthetic humans. What he wants to build, it's a system where humans and synthetics coexist. So, don't mess around. That's why you trust him. If he dares to lie to me, then I will do everything I can to die with him. But so far, he hasn't lied to me. Even if it's an outrageous promise, he can do it. Knight didn't look back. The corner of the mouth involuntarily curved into an arc. Diamond City, Radio Center. Hey. You, who are you? What are you doing here? A scruffy-looking young man in casual clothes stood up from the front of the broadcasting equipment. Although he was very scared, he still mustered up the courage to ask. What walked in was a group of volunteer soldiers wearing three-cornered hats, beige uniforms and scarves, and walkie-talkies hanging on their chests. Although none of them wore weapons, they were tall and aggressive, and the leader was Piper Wright. She walked over to the young man and said, "Yo, Travis Miles, long time no see." Hello, Miss Piper." Miles saw the volunteers standing in front of him, and the courage he mustered just now was gone, and he replied honestly. "Well, of course I'm fine now, and I have good news for you. The Diamond City radio station must be temporarily closed. The opening time is to be determined, and now you can go home and rest." Piper said. "What? How can you?" "It's been decided, little Miles, go home," Pip said bluntly. However, at this time, the door of the radio station was suddenly opened, and the mayor of Diamond City, Maiden, walked in, followed by several Diamond City guards. He was full of anger, pointed at Pip and said loudly, "Who gave you the right to shut down the Diamond City radio station? Don't you think you want to turn against the customer because you are on the thigh of the volunteer army? Ha, isn't this the mayor of our severe fatty liver? Ah, I almost forgot, you don't have a fatty liver, right?" Piper Wright walked over pretending to be frivolous, casually leaning on Madonna's shoulder. He whispered, "The reason why you are still alive is because Boss Yan thinks it might be useful to keep you. So, it's best not to let him change his mind. But you can't turn off the radio station either." Madonna's aura suddenly weakened, but he still wanted to persevere for the last time. "We all know what this radio station does, right? What's going on at the headquarters of the Academy? Do you need me to broadcast live with you?" Piper took out a walkie-talkie and shook it in front of Madonna. McDonough looked at Pip, then at the volunteer soldiers, gritted his teeth, and shouted at Miles, "Did you hear that? Let you go home and rest." Yes, seeing that even the mayor was like this, Miles still couldn't recognize the situation, and hurried out scrambling. McDonough looked at Pip with a livid face, hesitated to speak, but still didn't say a word, turned around and slammed the door and left. Piper Wright was full of joy. She picked up the walkie-talkie and connected to her sister's communication. "Cortana, is our latest newspaper ready? We must print more copies." "No, not a few copies, but save all of us. Use up all the paper. Wait until tomorrow, the news of the victory must be known to everyone." Former Federal Institute of Technology. Beneath the excavated passage, fierce fighting continued. The Volunteer Army Independent Regiment, led by the Mechanic Master's Garbage Robot and Swarm Robot, began to advance along the passage toward the depths of the Academy headquarters. But this passage was very narrow, and the Academy synthesizers had set up a lot of obstacles and bunkers in advance, so the advance was a bit slow, but Chen Yuyan didn't directly invest in the elite troops or even go into battle in person in order not to expand the damage. At this time, A small force of 20 to 30 people appeared on the edge of the excavation site. After getting the notification, Chen Yuyan left Ramirez to preside over the battle here, and then walked over with Yi himself. He immediately saw a very eye-catching bald head in sunglasses in this team. Who is it, not Diagon? But this time, he didn't walk in the front, he just walked behind with another dark-skinned woman with silver-white hair. Leading this team is a woman with big curly brown hair, about 40 years old. If you look at it by the standards of this wasteland in the last days, she should be regarded as a beautiful woman who still has charm. Are you Chen Yuyan? Nice to meet you. I'm Desdemona, the current leader of the railway. I've heard about you from Deacon before, but out of prudence, I never came to see you. The middle-aged woman tried her best to show kindness to Chen Yuyan, she said with a smile. Chen Yuyan also shook hands with her with a smile, but stabbed his lips. It's really prudent, if you come a few hours later, the academy will have been wiped out. I hope you can understand, because we do not have too strong industrial capabilities. Compared with the volunteers who can already produce standard rifles and bullets, and even tanks, there is naturally a big gap. So for our own safety, I must be cautious. Desdemona was not annoyed, but explained. Okay, I can understand. Chen Yuyan nodded. So, what are you guys doing here now? Chen Yuyan's tone was a bit indifferent. He had never had a good impression of the railway, an organization that seemed inexplicable to him. At a time when everyone was struggling to survive, there was still such a small group of schizophrenics who were thinking about how to liberate and synthesize people. In fact, at least half of the synthetic human incidents that occurred in the Federation in the past were done by railways. Because what they did was actually very irresponsible. They brought synthetics out of the academy, brainwashed them, implanted new memories, and then threw them into human society to fend for themselves. But synths don't need to sleep and don't age. They will be discovered sooner or later, and then they will be used as irrefutable evidence that the academy will replace the villagers, making the people of the Federation even more fearful of the academy and synths. Knight also told him that Sean asked him to help the academy recover a synthetic man, and that synthetic man became the leader of the predators after being rescued by the railway, and robbed many businesses with his superhuman strength. Team, killed many people. So, it doesn't matter if the railway doesn't help those residents, they don't have this obligation. But they muddied the pool of water and indirectly hurt more people, so it was their fault. We just want to see if there is anything that needs our help. In addition, we have a better understanding of the academy's behavior style. I think we can help you find those members who used the teleportation device to escape from the academy, and then, let them pay for it with blood. Desdemona was still smiling, but her words were extremely cruel. I think you may be disappointed, because I don't intend to kill any scientist in the academy, as long as they are obedient. Chen Yuyan said flatly. Desdemona's expression changed. Do you know how many people the academy has killed in the Federation over the years? I know, but I think they have the ability to atone for their sins with something more valuable than their lives. Chen Yuyan replied. Do you want to occupy the academy and then use them to satisfy your own ambitions? The smile on Desdemona's face had disappeared, and her voice contained anger. I heard Deacon say before that I was still in the I think no one would be so stupid. But now I see that your decision is really extremely stupid. You underestimate the academy and yourself too much. There is no need to discuss this matter. Chen Yuyan said, but one thing I can assure you is that the academy will disappear from the Federation. I will take them to another place and never come back. Then after I ensure the rule of the Federation, I will bring synthetics to the fore and have legal residency. Desdemona's expression eased a little, but she still said, are you really sure that you won't be backlashed by the academy? As long as the interests are the same, then I will never worry about being backlashed, including you. Although I don't agree with your ideas, I will still try to find common interests between us, such as what I just said about the legality of synths. Question. Well, since you, the leader of the railway, came here in person, I'll just say it straight. Chen Yuyan turned sideways, pointing at the huge hole that was dug out. The pothole has been expanded to a diameter of about 8 or 9 meters, and gunshots continue to be heard inside. In the surroundings, one after another robot jumped down to participate in the battle in an orderly manner, and some independent regiment fighters also began to participate in the battle one by one. Chen Yuyan looked over there, and asked calmly, "You guys, join the volunteer army as our intelligence department." When Desdemona heard this, her expression was a bit ugly. "I didn't come here to talk to you about this. But this is the only thing I want to talk to you about." Chen Yuyan interrupted her directly, "I have already put our common interests in front of you, so there is only one multiple choice question left. Obedience, or death. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 396. 390 To Whom to Surrender. Da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. The unique dull gunshots of the Scorpion Type I assault rifle continued to sound, and at the same time, the light blue laser beams emitted by the college laser guns continued to flicker in the air. Green. You lead a team of robots to destroy the automatic turret in the left passage. Ramirez directed while firing to suppress the synthetic man hiding behind a large pile of iron filing cabinets in the front passage. They just broke through more than 30 meters forward, and there was a fork in the road. Although I don't know where it leads, it's over if I go all the way. Green, who had been implanted with Believer 2 cyborg prosthesis, nodded. His mouth wearing a ventilator moved, and the two tubes connected to his chin squirmed for a while, making a hoarse voice with electronic noise. Preliminary scans have been done, and this is a pathway down, leading to another laboratory. No problem, we have no problem on the frontal battlefield. Go down and investigate, remember not to kill those scientists. They have been digging here for more than 200 years, and the underground passages extend in all directions. Don't let them have a chance to escape." Ramirez said. "Understood." Green waved his arm, and several garbage robots immediately walked towards the passage over there. Almost at the same time, a large number of laser beams and bullets hit the head and cover the face. At the end of this passage, several automatic turrets were set up, and hidden laser turrets protruded from the ceiling. Green raised his arm, and the 6-barreled machine gun in his hand began to rotate, and then a terrible rain of bullets poured out, and the 2 laser turrets on the ceiling were instantly torn apart by the rain of bullets. Ramirez watched the battle over there, and then marked a passage on the computer map. From his screen, it can be seen that they have explored a large area, and several laboratories have been occupied by several branch passages, but there are no scientists from the academy in them. The terrain here is too complicated. I don't know how long it will take to continue like this. Ramirez scratched his head. He had already sent Walter and Irwin to other branches. After Green went out, there are almost no captains available to him now. Leave it to us. A figure came from behind. Ramirez turned his head, only to see Chen Yuyan walking in with dozens of people. The clothes on these people looked full of vicissitudes of life, and they were wrapped in cloaks and big brimmed hats. Some of them also wore goggles, but they were all holding gauze rifles in their hands. These people are heavy gunners of the railway. Ramirez recognized the men immediately. Then he also saw another acquaintance in the crowd, Deacon. The heavy gunners of the railway also came to help. Let me introduce, this is Desdemona, the leader of the railway, and this is Glory, the core soldier of the railway. Chen Yuyan pointed at Desdemona and the dark-skinned man, said the silver-haired woman. Over the years, we have done a lot of investigation and research on the academy, and our heavy gunners have been fighting against synthetic humans for a long time. We can help you achieve your goals faster. Desdemona said. The railway is ours now. Chen Yuyan said while laughing and grabbing Deacon's shoulder. Desdemona said with a cold face, It's just a temporary cooperation now. After the academy is eliminated, I want to see where your so-called interests are, and then make a decision. These are all logical things, aren't they? Chunyuan said with a smile. We originally thought that the confrontation with the academy was the starting point of this struggle, but we didn't expect that you directly put the end in front of us. Deacon sighed. It's better than exploring step by step. Chunyuan laughed. An enemy appears in the direction of Reactor B. The direction of the FEV virus laboratory can no longer stand it. All the automatic turrets have been destroyed. There is a modified person leading the team over there, and we need at least 2 hunters to stop him. There are no hunters anymore. X4-18 was destroyed by another cyborg in the battle near the D-7 channel 10 minutes ago. In the control center of the academy, countless voices were in chaos, and everyone was shouting, everywhere is calling for help. It can't be stopped, it can't be stopped, it's over, we're over. Dr. Higgs slumped on a chair and muttered to himself. Now you can ask for help from the Brotherhood of Steel. Let them help us eliminate the volunteer army. Dr. Madison Lee once served the Brotherhood of Steel in the capital area, and she also put forward her own views. Is there a difference between being occupied by the Brotherhood of Steel or being occupied by the Zouaves? Do you think the Brotherhood of Steel will treat us better than the Zouaves? Another immediately retorted. But the volunteer army found the railway. Those rats hiding in the shadows want us to die? Then what should we do? Are we just waiting to die like this? Dr. Madison Lee said loudly. Knight also sat on the stool, watching the video of the battlefield on the screen. They've been losing battles in every branch channel, and now their remaining synth soldiers are running low, and in some places they've left their defense entirely to automatic turrets. Everyone knows that this is just playing for time. But how long can it be delayed? 1 minute? 2 minutes? Where is the technology of this modified man of the volunteer army? The style seems to be the same as their kind of tank that can dig the ground, but I have never seen it in any pre-war materials. Justin Ayer looked at the hideous and terrifying cyborg reformer on the screen, feeling a little absent-minded, his eyes glazed over. This is another world's technology, from a powerful force called Brotherhood of Nod. Knight said softly. Another world? Justin Ayer was dumbfounded. Sean has been sitting in a wheelchair next to him. His condition has begun to deteriorate, and even his daily activities have been affected. He said to Knight, "Tell them, Father. Leave the choice to everyone." Knight sighed. He turned off all the battlefield monitoring screens, and now there is no need for command. He looked around and said to the scientists present, the leader of the Volunteer Army Independence Regiment, Chunyuan, he comes from another world. Another world? In the sense of time, or another world in the sense of space? Or, is it based on quantum paradox? Madison Lee questioned directly. If I knew this principle, I wouldn't be sitting here. Knight said, when I first saw him, I felt that he was different from the people in this world. There was too much in him. It's clean. Later, he would always come up with some incredible things, such as a brand new assault rifle, a production line for producing bullets, and later even tanks. And these things are all brand new. That's why you think he came from another world? Madison Lee snorted coldly. No, actually, apart from these things, there is no direct evidence. The only evidence is that he himself said that he was able to travel between two worlds. One world is a world where a world war is going on, and the other world is a peaceful world that has not been stained by any flames of war. Knight said slowly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 397. 391 Choice. The world before the war? No war? No radiation? In this case, regardless of the world that is at war, does another peaceful world mean pure human genes? If such a world exists, then everything we do now is meaningless. It's not meaningless, but full of hope. The scientists of the academy all began to whisper. Seeing this scene, Madison Lee stood up and said loudly, "Enough. When you are discussing other worlds, think about the possibility of another world first. This is simply impossible. Are you going to do you want to give up everything you own with just an empty word? Then do you really want to go to the Brotherhood of Steel? Aren't they also disabled?" Justin Eyre asked. Madison Lee originally had a good impression of the Brotherhood of Steel. She had worked for the Brotherhood of Steel in the capital area for a long time, and she immediately said, it was Chen Yuyan's conspiracy that caused the Brotherhood of Steel to suffer heavy losses. Now we can negotiate with the Brotherhood of Steel. If we can exist as a research institution of the Brotherhood, then we can continue to have all of this. Continue our research, under the protection of the Brotherhood of Steel. But hasn't the Brotherhood of Steel been trying to drive us out of existence? Asked another doctor. Madison Lee raised his finger and pointed outside. Then take a good look now, who is it that hit our door? Is it the Brotherhood of Steel? As she said that, she pointed her head at Knight again, and the reason why we have fallen to this point, isn't it because of you, the traitor? First let us and the Brotherhood of Steel consume each other's strength, and then take advantage of our vacuum period to guide Chen Yuyan direct attack on our headquarters. All of this is caused by you. As soon as this remark came out, the faces of all the people present changed drastically, and needle-like gazes pierced Knight's body one after another. Knight had already expected this day to come, but he was not in a hurry. He just said slowly, after meeting Xiao En, I made a bet with Chen Yuyan. The bet is the future of mankind in this world. Because I used to think I saw the hope of human beings, but Chen Yuyan showed me another better choice, another world. He glanced at the people around him, and said, why not? What the scientists of the academy have wanted all their lives has been there, or in his hands. So, do we believe it? Or refuse? Why believe something that is impossible? Dr. Madison Lee exclaimed. However, the other scientists around had different expressions and did not condemn Knight together as she thought. Knight just said to himself, if you believe it, there really is a world that has not been destroyed by war at all, and we can all go there. Think about what we can do. The Academy has always wanted to redefine human beings, but in that world, human beings don't need to define. Our endpoint is just the starting point in that world. Think about how many things we can do with the scientific research power of the Academy. Even speaking, scientific research in that world is not useless. Because there is another world full of wars. We can live and conduct scientific research in a peaceful world, use our talents unscrupulously in a world of war, and even conquer the world. Then what if all of this is false? Madison Lee said sullenly, these things are more likely to be lies fabricated by Chen Yuyan. He wants to use this lie to destroy the Academy. If that's the case, then that's the second option I mentioned, just die. Knight smiled faintly, you don't need to do anything, I will be the first to fight him with my life. So, as Sean said just now, the right to choose is in everyone's hands. Madison Lee looked back at Sean suddenly, and said in disbelief, Holy Father. You already knew this? Why didn't you say it before? One thing I can't deny is that I'm tempted. We have to consider a key issue, which is time. In order to ensure the purity of human genes in me, I have never married in my life. But now my life has come to an end, even if it is counting the pure genes of my father, there are still 5 to 60 years left. Sean said. He glanced at all the scientists around him, and then continued. To truly accomplish our goal of redefining human beings, the third generation of synthetics is far from enough. According to our plan, at least the fifth generation of synthetics will be required to reach human standards. But, in 60 years, can we do it? Sean's voice trembled. Madison Lee snapped, is that why you betrayed us? Betrayed? No, never betrayed. All military operations I command are close to everything I have learned, and I have used all methods, even using the synthetic man M7-97 to shake the morale of the Brotherhood of Steel. In fact, if it wasn't for this, we might even be wiped out by the Brotherhood of Steel, but I turned the tide of the battle, Knight said in a deep voice. Actually, the gamble between me and Chunyuan also includes this. If he can't even beat me, then don't tell me anything about another world. Some scientists around have begun to nod, but they do not include the life science department, because if a different world really exists, it means that all their efforts are in vain. Perfect and pure human genes are enough in another world that's 7 billion. What else are they redefining? So now we are trying our best to resist, but we can't stop the offensive of the volunteer army. But it is at this time that we will think about this proposal. If it was true that a month ago, someone mentioned the matter of the different world to everyone, will anyone believe it? Knight asked again. So, the choice is in everyone's hands. Sean seemed very tired. After he said this, he closed his eyes and seemed to fall asleep. You don't know the background of the Brotherhood of Steel. You don't even know what they brought to the Federation. Madison Lee said loudly. Knight retorted with a cold face, so, you know something we don't know? Madison Lee couldn't care about these anymore, she said, Liberty Supreme. It is a giant robot left before the war found by the Brotherhood of Steel. This robot is completely invincible, nothing can destroy it. As long as Liberty Supreme still, the Brotherhood of Steel is invincible. Well, so the Brothers of Steel will have a giant robot. So, should we choose this more realistic robot, or should we choose a relatively unreal world? Knight said. As he spoke, gunshots could already be heard from the control center where everyone is now. The flames of war are getting closer. It is absolutely impossible for me to join forces with you, a traitor. Madison Lee stood up. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 398. 392 Receiving College, Part 1. Madison Lee stood up and looked at Knight and said coldly, just take your time and daydream about that different world. After finishing speaking, he turned and left, and Clayton Holdren, director of the Life Sciences Department, also got up and left. As soon as he left, many scientists in the Department of Life Sciences also stood up. On the contrary, not many scientists from other departments left, especially none from the Advanced Systems Department and the Robotics Department. Because what Chunyuan showed them now, including cyborgs, tick-tanks, and the NS-4 civilian robot that they learned through their intelligence network, was a great temptation for them. Because these are very obvious, it is not the style of this world at all. About 1/3 of the scientists were going to leave with Clayton Holdren and Madison Lee. They were going back to take their families, go to the surface through the molecular teleporter, and then contact the Brotherhood of Steel. At this time, Chunyuan and the others had advanced to the relatively deep area of the college headquarters. With the emergence of a large number of passages, the battle line has also continued to expand. The troops that had been waiting on the ground have also entered the battlefield, leaving only some reserve troops and those larger robots and tanks guarding the ground. The underground world built by the college has a very large area. Chunyuan's independent regiment, plus the robots of the Mechanic Master and the robot troop of the General Atomics Shopping Plaza, have a total number of about 500, which still cannot take care of all places. It is conceivable that if the strength of the academy is complete, thousands of synths will fight endlessly in this narrow underground world, which is definitely an extremely difficult battle. Fortunately, the number of synths in the college is very small now. After the consumption of the Battle of Bunker Mountain and the consumption of the previous ground battles, their remaining synths are less than 100. Chunyuan never took part in the battle. He took Yi, Preston and two high-level railway officials Desdemona and Diogen, who have been walking on the battlefield. I have to say that the heavy gunners of the railway are still very useful. They have rich experience in combating synthetic humans, and they are very familiar with some habits of the academy. Even for this very unfamiliar academy headquarters, the correct path can be judged through the arrangement of various facilities. 4 hours after they broke into the ground, Chen Yuyan finally got the message he wanted: "Boss Yan. We have found the way to the control center of the college. But that way is full of debris, and some should be the last synthetic human troops in the academy, and it will take some time to get rid of them. When I call Green and Irwin back, I can finish it in 10 minutes at most." It was Ramirez who spoke. After following Chen Yuyan, he has also made considerable progress, both in personal combat skills and battlefield command are already at the first-class level. It can be said that he has become Chen Yuyan's right-hand man in the independent group. It's over. Everything is. Chen Yuyan finally let out a long breath. As long as the academy is taken down, the already battered Brotherhood of Steel is no longer a problem. After driving out the Brotherhood of Steel, the mission can be said to be successfully completed. The shadows hanging over the Federation, including the ubiquitous academies, the autocratic Brotherhood of Steel, and the railway in secondary school, as long as these three biggest forces are dealt with, then the remaining gunmen who have been mauled by the Brotherhood of Steel will still. It's only a matter of time before there are looters, ferocious ghouls, and super mutants. Beside, Desdemona also picked up the communicator and commanded, "Glory, you also go to the main passage over there to help the volunteers break through the last line of defense of the academy." Chen Yuyan walked forward and said, "Let's go. I think the leaders of the college should also want to chat with us." Ramirez did what he said, and less than 10 minutes later, he sent a message: "Boss Yan. We have opened up the channel to the control center, and now we are trying to find a way to open the door." Almost at the same time as the communication was transmitted, an old voice came from the loudspeaker next to a camera next to it: "Enough, you have won, Volunteer Army, Chen Yuyan. We surrender. I hope you will not harm this place. Scientists and civilians." Chen Yuyan raised his head and said loudly to the camera, "That's exactly what I want to say. I guarantee your safety. Now, let the remaining synths put down their weapons and open the door of the control center." "So, very good. I'll open the door now," the old voice replied. "Boss Yan. The door is open." Ramirez's voice also came from the communication, but at this moment, there was a sudden noise from the communication side, and then he was heard shouting loudly, "Hi! Stop! What are you going to do? Da-da-da!" Boom! There was a burst of gunshots and explosions from the other end of the communication. "Ramirez! What happened? Get the situation under control immediately, and I'll come over right away." 1-1. Chen Yuyan yelled. Tap Yi's foot behind him, and the whole person disappeared there in an instant, heading straight for the control center with an after-image. It's people from the railway. Ramirez's side was obviously in chaos, and he didn't even have time to speak. Chen Yuyan's eyes froze, and he pointed at Desdemona and said loudly, "Catch her." Before Desdemona could speak, two soldiers from the independent regiment next to her grabbed her wrist and twisted it around, and the other grabbed her neck in an instant. "What orders did you give your people?" Chen Yuyan roared with a fierce look in his eyes. "I didn't give any instructions. If you want to blame the hatred between the academy and us is too deep." Desdemona wanted to resist at first, but she couldn't break free at all, so she gave up resistance directly. Chen Yuyan walked over and said coldly, "All your cleverness will only make your situation more embarrassing in the end. Come with me now, you'd better pray that your people don't cause too much damage. Otherwise, say maybe you have to pay for them." After speaking, he turned around and left. Desdemona said loudly to his back, Are you going to stand with those lunatics in the academy? They are murderers. You have no idea how many crimes they have committed in the Federation. How to make them atone for their sins is a matter of my consideration, and it has nothing to do with you. Chen Yuyan didn't turn his head, but punched hard on the wall next to him. The metal wall was instantly smashed into a large sunken pit. Coming to the control center, the situation over there has been controlled by Ramirez. I only saw two very obvious explosion marks at the door of the control center, and a row of bullet holes. It seemed that someone had thrown a grenade inside and fired shots. What caused this was the presence of more than a dozen railway soldiers, including 3 railway heavy gunners and the silver-haired black woman Gloria. But now they have all been controlled by the independent group. Yi rushed here immediately and defeated Glory, and the 2 cyborg reformers Green and Irwin were also present. Under such circumstances, the soldiers of these railways could not resist at all. Chen Yuyan walked over quickly, only to see 5 scientists in white coats lying in a pool of blood at the gate of the control center, and the others were hiding in the other corner of the control center. It seemed that the moment the door opened, the soldiers of the railway rushed in and threw grenades and fired, catching Ramirez and the others by surprise. However, the damage caused was much smaller than expected, because a man wearing a white painted T-51B fell on the ground. Nate. Chen Yuyan grabbed Ramirez by the neckline and said fiercely, "Tell me. What happened?" The railway people should have premeditated. They rushed in to throw grenades and shoot at the moment they opened the door. I controlled them at the first time, but it was still a step too late. However, fortunately at that time, I rushed out. I don't even know why he was in the academy, but he threw himself on the grenade and blocked the explosion, so no more casualties were caused, Ramirez said. Chen Yuyan's face was extremely ugly, and he immediately pointed to the scientists in the control center and said loudly, "Take Nat to treatment first. Immediately. We have already surrendered. Why are we still shooting?" A scientist stood up and pointed at Chen Yuyan and shouted, "We need an explanation." Another person in the crowd also said, but that person was timid, hiding inside and not daring to come out. "An explanation? You will get an explanation." Chen Yuyan immediately said to Ramirez, "Bring these people from the railway." Ramirez immediately escorted the dozen or so railroad soldiers into the control center, then made them kneel in a row facing the wall, pointed guns at the back of their heads, and waited for orders. At the same time, Chen Yuyan also walked over and turned over Nat, who was lying on the ground. Only he could move the heavy power armor. Opening the valve behind the power armor, he lifted Nate out. I only saw that there was no trauma on Nate's body, but a lot of blood flowed from his mouth and nose. Originally, the power of the 2 grenades was not enough to threaten the T-51B power armor, but the situation was critical just now, and Knight threw himself on the grenades, and was injured by the shockwave of the explosion. Several scientists from the Department of Life Sciences hurried over and took Knight to their medical center for treatment. Then Chen Yuyan looked around, and he soon saw an old man in a wheelchair among the crowd. Because he really couldn't help noticing this old man, his temperament was too outstanding. Her beard and hair are white and well-groomed, her temperament is elegant, and her eyes are shining with the light of wisdom. Moreover, when the surrounding scientists encountered drastic changes just now, they protected him intentionally or unintentionally, which also showed his status. Noticing that Chen Yuyan was looking at him, the old man steered the wheelchair towards the side, and said flatly, "Mr. Chen Yuyan, it seems that our first meeting was not a pleasant one. You are Xiao En, right? You are better than I imagined." Chen Yuyan nodded and said, "Then I'll accept this compliment." Sean said, raising his hand to move across the chaotic scene, "About the current situation, do you have anything to tell me?" Chen Yuyan smiled, turned around and looked at the door. Several soldiers had already brought Deacon and Desdemona here. When the mutation happened just now, Deacon did not resist, he just watched all this happen silently. So, who threw the grenade? Chen Yuyan asked with a smile. This man. Ramirez said, pointing to a railway heavy gunner. Boom. Chen Yuyan took out a pistol and shot the heavy gunner in the head, blood splattered all over the ground. Desdemona struggled violently and said loudly, "Stop. It's none of their business. It's my order." And this man? Ramirez said unmoved, pointing to another railway soldier. Boom. Shots rang out, blood and brains splattered everywhere. Chen Yuyan. I'm going to kill you. Desdemona shouted hysterically while staring at Chen Yuyan with red eyes. Chen Yuyan walked over and grabbed Desdemona by the hair, lifted her up, and stared at her chin with a pistol. You had a chance to let the people of the academy atone for what they did before, yes. But now you just make me sick. If you gave the order, are you ready? You kill me. Desdemona said sharply. Bastard. Don't hurt our leader. It was my idea to shoot. Glory broke free from Erwin's restraint, and rushed towards the scientists of the academy. I am at odds with the academy. If I don't kill them, I will die with peace. Da-da-da-da. Erwin opened fire immediately, and Glory was hit by more than a dozen bullets and fell to the ground, but she still raised her head and stared at Sean, and it took almost half a minute before she fell silent. Let her go, this is indeed not what Desdemona meant. She would not do such impulsive things. Deacon said later. Only then did Chen Yuyan let go of his hand, threw Desdemona aside, waved his hand and said, "Put these railway people in prison." Then he turned around and looked at Sean, then at Desdemona, and said loudly, "Academy. You have preserved and developed a large amount of pre-war technology and left a spark for human civilization. This matter itself is worthy of praise. But, you developed the FEV virus, conducted human experiments, kidnapped and replaced federal residents, and created more than one massacre. Like University Corner. The crimes you have committed are worthy of the death penalty. But you still have old people, children, and a large number of innocent family members here. I can give you another chance to redeem your sins. Therefore, the verdict for you is, exile. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 399. 393 Receiving College, Part 2. As soon as Chen Yuyan said the words, the faces of the scientists present at the academy changed dramatically. What you mean by exile? Do you want to drive us to the wasteland on the ground? One of the scientists trembled. I think with your current state, exile to the federal wasteland is probably no different from the death penalty. Chen Yuyan stroked his chin and said, the exile I mean is to let you leave the Federation forever. To another world. He originally said this to scare the scientists, but he didn't expect to see excited expressions on their faces. You mean, the different world really exists? Justin Eyre asked in great surprise. He, Chen Yuyan sneered, why, what do you think? Another world does exist, but you are still just wearing the body of sin. Even if I let you pass, you must live under control. By serving the society to repay the harm you have done to the people of the Federation by means of welfare. If that different world is really a place that hasn't been poisoned by the flames of war as you said, you can ask me to do anything. Justin Eyre said. But the price is that you can only serve me for the rest of your life, and you have no choice. Because if you still have a second heart, I can throw you back at any time and put you on the wasteland to die. Chen Yuyan said coldly. A voice in the crowd whispered, why are you? Just because I have defeated you, I am the winner, and you, from now on, will be my trophies. Chen Yuyan very keenly found that person in the crowd, staring at him. Now, you know what am I doing? Sean finally spoke. He said softly, I believe we are ready to serve you and atone for what we have done. Now, can you tell us what we should do? Chen Yuyan looked at Xiao and Jiao a lot again. He doesn't have those useless egos, is resilient and open-minded. Since you lost, then accept the result calmly, and then make plans for your future, if you have any. First of all, everyone in the academy, including synthetics, is prohibited from entering the Federation, the use of molecular transmitters is prohibited, and the synthetic factory is immediately shut down. Then all residents and scientists in the academy must register and recall all synthetics who are active outside. Registration. In addition, all databases are open to me, and I will query and sort out the contents. This is the first step. As Chen Yuyan said, he looked around, and sure enough, he saw that some people down there were dissatisfied when they heard about the public database, and he understood that these people were still fluke mentality in Zinken. But he will have more time to take care of them slowly in the future. After that, I gradually began to migrate to other worlds. This is not something that happens overnight, so it may last for a long time. He continued. If you say that the use of molecular teleporters is prohibited, just now, Dr. Madison Lee has left. She took about 1/3 of the scientists. Justin Eyre said. Molecular teleporter? Let her go. Chen Yuyan wasn't worried about it at all. Sure enough, it didn't take long before Preston, who was outside, escorted a group of scientists back, including a middle-aged woman Dr. Madison Lee. I saw a group of them gathered in front of another molecular transporter deep in the academy, making a fuss and making a scene, so I brought them here, Preston said. Madison Lee was clearly in a state of extreme anger. She struggled and screamed loudly, "You can't be opponents of the Brotherhood of Steel. You are all going to die." Chen Yuyan smiled faintly, looked at Dr. Lee and asked back, "Have you noticed that even if we all have to die, as long as I move my finger, you may never see it for the rest of my life?" Madison Lee's expression changed. She was about to say something, when suddenly there was a shrill siren in the control center. Chen Yuyan immediately turned to look at Xiao En and asked, "Where is the police?" Sean also looked serious. "This is an alarm sent by our eyeball drone that is still on the ground. Generally, if it is not a particularly urgent matter, this level of alarm will not be used. Take over the picture." As soon as he finished speaking, several technicians walked over, reopened the large screen in the control center, and switched to the area where the alarm was sent. Seeing the picture on the huge screen, Chen Yuyan's heart sank, and he could not help clenching his teeth. But Madison Lee's triumphant laughter came from the side. "I said it. You will never be able to defeat the Brotherhood of Steel. Invincible." An hour ago, when Chen Yuyan led the Volunteer Army Independence Regiment to launch the final attack on the college, Boston Airport was also making final preparations. The top leaders of the existing fraternities, including Inspector Ingram, Inspector Quinlan, and Inspector Tegan, all came to the front of the huge hangar behind the airport and looked at the giant robot standing on the support Liberty Supreme. Weapons system, ready. Beryllium oscillator, installation is complete. Fusion engine, start. Voice system, normal. The results of the self-examination kept coming from the loudspeaker next to it, and Inspector Ingram also had a serious face. She turned to the other two inspectors and said, "Now, Liberty Supreme is ready. Inspector Quinlan, start it." "It's my honor." Superintendent Quinlan raised his eyes, walked over to the console, opened a transparent glass cover, and looked at a red button below. He paused, and then slapped it down without hesitation. "Invincible." Inspector Quinlan said loudly. At the same time as the button was pressed, the electronic eyes of Liberty Supreme's eyes immediately lit up, and the indicator lights on his body also lit up. The sound of the engine running became louder, and puffs of white smoke spewed out from the exhaust port. Goal setting, Volunteer Army. Inspector Ingram began typing instructions on the computer, and she turned around and asked, "Is it the castle or the Hill of Sanctuary?" "The Hill of Sanctuary is too far away. We have to cross the entire Boston area." Destroy the castle first and restore the morale of the Brotherhood. Then we will fight the volunteers. Inspector Quinlan said. Very good, the input is complete. Liberty Supreme, let's go. Zilla puffs of white smoke spewed out from the bracket on Liberty Supreme, and a large number of lines and pipes connected to the robot were separated. Then, I saw this huge 12.19-meter high robot raise its hand, and tore off the nearly 20-meter high bracket with a bang. A loud voice came from the robot's loudspeaker. Yan Kingdom's doctrine is a lie, Liberty Supreme will fight for a free America. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 400. 394 Beacon of Freedom. GPS system initialization completed, recorrect the coordinates. Current location, Massachusetts, the birthplace of American freedom. Boom. Liberty Supreme took a step forward, and more than 500 tons of weight fell on the soles of his feet, even making the surrounding ground tremble. And in the high-power loudspeaker installed on the robot's shoulder, the slogan of generosity and justice was constantly shouted in a voice that sounded magnificent and upright. Target confirmed, destroy all Yanguo party members, coordinates, castle. Yan Kingdom will eventually fail, the glory of freedom and democracy will eventually shine on the world. Boom. 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 Liberty Supreme walked towards the castle step by step with heavy steps. Perhaps because the body was too bulky, when passing by an abandoned building near the airport, he accidentally bumped into it. With a bang, the abandoned three-story building was knocked down by Liberty Master like a building block, but the robot didn't even shake it. There are bound to be sacrifices on the road to democracy, and your contributions will be remembered. Boom. 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 Liberty Supreme walked out of the airport while shouting slogans. Hearing these slogans, Paladin Glade was sweating coldly, and turned to Inspector Ingram and asked, "What's the matter with Liberty Supreme? Why does it still shout some pre-war slogans?" Inspector Ingram replied with a sigh, "No way, Liberty Supreme's language system seems to be encrypted, and I can't read the data in it. Even if it is possible, it will take more time, but what we lack most now is time." Inspector Quinlan said with some sarcasm, "But as far as I know, the United States before the war was neither democratic nor free. They invaded Canada, occupied the entire territory of Canada, and plundered Canada's resources. And in order to suppress Canada and even the United States itself, anti-war demonstrations, and they even threw in advanced weapons including T-45 power armor. The essence of freedom and democracy is kindness, and Yanguoism is the embodiment of evil. Over there, Liberty Supreme is still shouting slogans. Its heavy mechanical feet stepped heavily on the ruins of the so-called freedom, wantonly trampling on the land of the United States 200 years ago. So, the United States used their own counterexample to show us the direction of the future. Only a strong dictatorship can form a truly perfect new order. The remnants of the US government, the Enclave, is under their own most powerful weapon. It's ironic to go to ruin." Inspector Quinlan said again. "Ha ha ha ha, I also participated in the battle to attack the Enclave headquarters 10 years ago. At that time, Liberty Supreme was still called Liberty King Kong Note 1, ha 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 ha. I saw it shouting the slogan of freedom and democracy, destroying the last remnants of the US government at the same time is really delightful." Inspector Tegan said with a smile. At this time, Liberty Supreme had already walked out of Boston Airport and began to walk step by step in the direction of the castle. It can be seen that there are already weapons shooting at it. It should be those marauders who have been frightened, and super mutants who don't know what to do. But the bullets of this individual weapon don't even have the possibility of leaving scratches on Liberty Supreme's thick armor. Let's go. Mobilize our last strength. Together with Liberty Supreme, destroy the castle. Completely wipe out with the volunteer army. Paladin Glade said loudly. Fighting against the Red invaders, authorize the use of the highest level of force. Embrace democracy, or you will be wiped out by the flames of freedom. While Liberty Supreme was talking, he took out a shell that looked like an enlarged version of a mortar shell from a slotted back basket installed on his back with his backhand, and threw it directly towards the place where the shot was fired. Boom! A violent explosion and dazzling flash even formed a mushroom cloud tens of meters high. What Liberty Supreme threw out was a tactical nuclear bomb. It is completely throwing the tactical nuclear bomb as a grenade, but it stands still in the strong wind of the tactical nuclear bomb explosion, unscathed. And those who shot at it just now didn't know whether they were predators or super mutants, and they were blown to pieces along with the surrounding buildings in this nuclear bomb explosion. Read the Culture Database, quoting New England poet Robert Frost, "Freedom is courage. I want more Red invaders." Liberty Supreme continued to move forward while speaking. Are you sure you want to follow it? Inspector Tegan's face was a little ugly. He found that Liberty Supreme is completely open and closed in this way of fighting, the kind that drops nuclear bombs if there is a disagreement. Who dares to follow it? Mark 28 tactical nuclear bomb, with an explosive yield of 2 tons. If you wear power armor, as long as you don't get close to the explosion range of 300 meters, there will be no problem. Ingram said, her eyes became fiery, and she took it from the side. Picking up his power armor helmet and putting it on, he waved and shouted, "Soldiers of the Brotherhood! All set out? Follow me! Destroy the volunteer army! Destroy the volunteer army! Invincible!" The Brotherhood of Steel soldiers present, whether they were knights in charge of combat, attendants in charge of logistics, or bachelors in charge of scientific research, all shouted loudly. In the face of the invincible Liberty Supreme, the lost bravery and self-confidence of the Brotherhood of Steel returned again. They shouted the invincible slogan of the Brotherhood, put on power armor conditionally, picked up weapons unconditionally, and swarmed away following the footsteps of Liberty Supreme. A giant super mutant rushed towards the Liberty Supreme with a dozen or so little brothers, and they were still saying in that lame way, "Big machine. Take it down. Wear it as clothes. Democracy will never be defeated." Liberty Supreme shouted slogans to meet him. The giant super mutant with a height of more than 5 meters could barely reach its waist in front of the Liberty Supreme, but it still roared and waved the anchor in its hand and slammed on the Liberty Supreme's feet. Boom! Liberty Supreme's huge fist sent the giant super mutant flying several meters away. Then it added another kick, and several super mutants around were also kicked out one after another. Death is the best choice for your Yanguoism. Liberty Supreme took a step forward, leaned forward suddenly, and suddenly shot out an extremely powerful red laser beam from the electronic eyes emitting light blue light. The laser beam irradiated on the giant super mutant, the broken copper and metal hanging on it, and a van that was used as a heart shield were instantly melted by the powerful laser beam. It screamed loudly, the muscles and fat on its body were also ignited, and the whole body turned into a huge pillar of fire as high as 5 meters. Red invaders, destroy, the bell of freedom is ringing again. In just 10 seconds, the giant super mutant that Chinyan and the volunteer army took a lot of effort to defeat before was easily killed by Liberty Supreme. Flying bird helicopters soared into the sky, covering the footsteps of Liberty Supreme in the air. At the same time, the last base of the Brotherhood of Steel, the large airship Pridewind, also started to fly towards the castle. Note 1, in fact, they are all called Liberty Prime, and the only change is the Chinese translation. But in the setting, the number of Liberty Supreme is Mk2, which is an upgraded version of Liberty King Kong in Radiation 3 and Broken Steel. I don't even know if this chapter will be 404. After all, some words are too explosive. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 401. 395, the decisive battle is imminent. In the Academy's control center, Chunyuan also felt shocked when he saw the picture of Liberty Supreme on the screen. Everywhere the Liberty Supreme passed was plowed into flat ground. As long as it encountered resistance, it would immediately throw a nuclear bomb over it. Where it passed there was nothing but death and a crumbling ruin. What surprised Chunyuan was not Liberty Supreme's powerful eye lasers, nor the extremely offensive way of throwing nuclear bombs, but the structural strength of this robot. A few times its nukes didn't drop too far, but even the close-range explosions of the nukes didn't hurt it a bit. What is the direction of action of Liberty Supreme now? Chunyuan asked. The scientist operated on the console, and several possible courses of action appeared on the screen. If you want to go to the shelter hill, then it should have gone northwest before, but now it is going along the. If it is going towards the former site of the Federal Institute of Technology, it should not cross the river. Therefore, the target with the greatest strategic value in the current direction of Liberty Supreme is the castle of the Volunteer Army. Castle? No. If the castle is destroyed, the Volunteer Army will be hit hard again. The surrounding residents will lose confidence in the Volunteer Army again, and they will not be willing to accept the protection of the Volunteer Army, let alone join the Volunteer Army. Preston, say it quickly. Are you sure it's a castle? Chunyuan asked, still looking at the scientist. 80% sure. The scientist replied. I must go back to the castle immediately to organize the evacuation of civilians. Preston Garvey said. Chunyuan nodded and said, contact Piper Wright and ask her to turn on the Diamond City radio station again. Locate the Federation's coordinates through the radio's music signal. Then, find someone to restart the molecular transmitter. Okay. Justin Eyre quickly agreed. Preston, with our current military strength, we can't stop the Liberty Supreme and the Pridewin airship. Moreover, if the Brotherhood of Steel dispatches even the airship, there must be a large group of people wearing power armor on the ground. The Fraternity Knights are also launching an attack. No one in the Federation can resist this military force. Chunyuan looked at Preston and said. I have made up my mind, Boss Yan. This time, I will never escape. If I escaped from Quincy Town because I wanted to leave a spark for the Volunteer Army, then this time, when the Volunteer Army is about to go at the moment of success, I will never shrink back. I will live and die with the castle. Preston said seriously. But even so, the Brotherhood of Steel will attack with all their strength, and it will be difficult for us to match. So, I have a plan. Chunyuan immediately made arrangements. Preston came to the place where the molecular teleporter was located. This is a small circular hall of about 20 square meters, surrounded by 4 energy emitters aimed at the center of the small hall. A young man with blonde hair came to the console of the molecular transmitter and began to readjust. Let me see, the signal scanning, failed. Boss Yan, are you sure you have restarted the Diamond City radio station? Wait a minute, yes, the signal came out. Started to resynchronize, well, test the first time, complete, deviation 0.0013%. Immediately conduct the second test. The young man's movements are very skillful, and he can't beat him at all by quickly operating the countless buttons on the console. Preston and the others looked dazzled for a while, and this alone reflected the difference between the well-educated people in the academy and those who grew up in the federal wasteland. The third test is completed, the deviation is 0.000001%, within the allowable safety range, and the transmission can be carried out, sir. The young man said. Preston smiled, patted him on the shoulder and asked, what's your name? Boy. My name is Lian Benet, sir. I hope you can successfully repel the Brotherhood of Steel this time, really. They are not good people. The boy said. What? You hate the Brotherhood of Steel so much? Preston asked. If you hate it, it is true. They will kill every synthetic person they see, and they won't even give them a chance to speak. Leon said. Preston noticed that when he mentioned synthetics, he used the word murdered, indicating that in his opinion, synthetics were treated as human beings. But he didn't care too much, the castle is the most important thing now. He turned his head, looked at the 20 independent regiment fighters who followed him, and all the robots here, and asked, "Is there any problem with the transmission of those robots?" "No problem. However, it may take a long time to scan during the first transmission. Each type of robot needs to scan for about 2 to 10 minutes when it is transmitted for the first time, depending on the complexity of the robot," said Leon. "Then send a few of us humans there first. Walter, you stay and organize the transfer of these robots," Preston said to Walter, who was standing beside him wearing X-01 advanced power armor. "Yes, sir." Walter nodded. Swish. A white light flashed in front of his eyes. When Preston opened his eyes again, he found that he had reached the square in the center of the castle and was aimed at by dozens of guns. He quickly raised his hand and said loudly, "Don't shoot, it's me." Preston. "Wait a minute." The leader turned out to be Sturgis, and he immediately called the volunteer soldiers to put away their weapons. He looked at Preston suspiciously and asked, "Garvey, why did you use molecular teleportation? Is it a human or a synthetic human?" "I'm Preston Garvey." "It's true. Now we have won. Boss Yan led us to capture the control center of the Academy, and now the Academy has surrendered. All synths will be recovered, and the Federation will no longer. There won't be any synths," Preston said loudly. Swish. 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 White light flashed continuously, and more than 20 soldiers from the Independence Regiment of the Volunteer Army were also sent over. In their hands, they all held heavy weapons including rocket launchers and Northwest Wind air defense missiles. "Don't talk too much now, the Brotherhood of Steel will attack soon. Start evacuating the people immediately," Preston said quickly without further explanation. "Indeed, I just wanted to tell you this. The Brotherhood of Steel's airship had already started to move an hour ago. But instead of rushing directly to the castle, it chose to go around the bay and go up along the Charles River. At that time I knew they must have ground troops." Sturgis looked serious. "Stop talking. Get ready to fight right now." The Brotherhood of Steel dispatched a giant robot equipped with a nuclear bomb. "This battle is absolutely different. The Brotherhood of Steel is already crazy, and the possibility that they will use nuclear bombs to attack civilians cannot be ruled out. Immediately organize the evacuation. You guys, immediately go to the surrounding ruins to set up anti-aircraft firepower points. Be careful to disperse, and don't be caught by a nuclear bomb." Preston Garvey finally showed the courage of a senior general of the Volunteer Army at this time. Because he first met night before, and later met Chenyuan. With the help of these two strong men, he didn't really need to go to the battlefield many times, but he himself was always an excellent commander. Now at this critical juncture, he has also used all his action power. "Okay. You, and you. Come with me. Sound the alarm immediately and call all the civilians. Tell them that the Brotherhood of Steel is going to come over and kill us all. Evacuate immediately." Sturgis immediately ordered a few people and got to work right away. "Go to the armory and take out all the bazookas and machine guns. Take out all the weapons that can pose a threat to the bird helicopter," Preston said, pointing in the direction of the armory. "Don't forget the grenades now, our enemies may well be the Brotherhood of Steel Knights in power armor." Swish. Swish. The white light flickered again. This time, it was a Mr. Storm robot. After it teleported over, it waved the plasma gun on the mechanical tentacles and circled around. However, it was the second and third stations, a total of more than 40 Mr. Tornadoes were sent over, and these were Mr. Tornadoes from the General Atomics shopping center. After that, there was another batch of garbage robots and swarm robots, and then stopped for about 5 minutes, and then began to send assembly robots and tank robots over. Basically, in this attack on the Academy, all the remaining robots were teleported. But the teleportation was not over yet. After bursts of white light flashed again, more than 100 synthetic humans also appeared in the castle. Seeing this scene, Sturgy and others were shocked and almost shot. But Preston hurriedly stopped. "Don't shoot. The Academy has surrendered now. These synthetics are here to help us defend." Only then did Sturgis feel a little relieved, but he was still full of vigilance when he looked at these synthetic humans. Most of the synths sent over this time are crude first-generation synths, and only 5 second-generation synths act as captains to command them. However, the college-made laser rifles they held in their hands were somewhat different. The blue light flashing on the energy core of the laser rifles was much stronger than before. The output power of these laser rifles has been increased. Although it will increase the risk of the laser guns exploding, it has also alleviated the shortcoming of the college's laser guns' insufficient firepower to a certain extent. With a click, Preston loaded the gun in his hand. It was Chun Yuyan's explosive shotgun. And there were 8 other soldiers holding an M41, a 1-pulse rifle in their hands, all of which were given to them by Chun Yuyan. Chun Yuyan brought 3-pulse rifles to this world at first, and later he produced 5 more. Because the points are precious, he did not produce too many. Now it can be said that he has taken out all the things in the bottom of his box. On the other side, in the former site of the Federal Institute of Technology. "Go. Come on. Get in the car. Call the tank over here," Irwin said loudly, waving his right arm with the 6-barreled machine gun, his voice filled with dull electronic noise. Another cyborg reformer, Green, is also directing the 40 Independent Regiment fighters here to prepare for battle and prepare to go. Under the control of the NE-beta parasite, the 2 tick tanks transformed back into tank mode, and then stopped at the front of the line to wait, while other soldiers were also sorting out their equipment. These fighters were well armed, mostly Gauss rifles, collected from the railroad's heavy gunners. Although there is still animosity between the railway and the Brotherhood of Steel, Chun Yuyan did not trust them when it came to attacking and killing the surrendered Academy scientists, so he confiscated all their equipment, and left the railway soldiers behind. Maintain order in the college. As long as those railway soldiers no longer have the intention to kill the scientists of the Academy, they will never be bought by the Academy because of their grievances with the Academy. In a sense, Chun Yuyan could really use their people to manage the Academy temporarily. "Captain. What about those engineering vehicles?" A soldier from the Independent Regiment came over and asked Green. "In addition to the slow drilling machines, drive away the bulldozers, excavators, and those trucks. These vehicles can also be used as a means of assault," Irwin said. Several Mr. Skillful hands have floated over, and they started to weld additional armor plates on the weak parts of these engineering vehicles to enhance their defense capabilities. Moreover, a bracket was added to the body of the engineering vehicle, on which was installed the M-2 12.7 mm caliber heavy machine gun obtained from Bunbeo Mountain. When they were refitting the vehicle, there was a sound of engine roaring from the sky, and 2 black spots appeared from the sky and approached quickly. "It is really 2 large helicopters." Green and Irwin, who had already been notified, immediately calmed down the restless soldiers. "Don't be afraid. These 2 planes belong to us. They are new equipment brought by Boss Yan." "Oh. Besides tanks, does Boss Yan even have planes?" A soldier of the Independent Regiment looked towards the sky in surprise. And when he clearly saw the flying helicopter, each soldier's mouth grew so big that they couldn't close it for a long time. The impact these 2 helicopters brought to them was too great. The only aircraft that the residents of the Federation can see, apart from the airship of the Brotherhood of Steel, is the bird helicopter of the Brotherhood. but the body is short and thick, and there is no armed dragon frame at all. It looks like a fat bird helicopter is completely incomparable with the two helicopters that are flying over now. Note 1. Note 1, Brotherhood of Steel's bird helicopter is a castrated version obtained from the research on the wreckage of the VB-02 helicopter they obtained from the Enclave, and its performance in all aspects cannot be compared with the original VB-02 bird helicopter. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 402. 396, All the cards are out. The sound of the rattling engine became louder and louder, and the two large helicopters in the sky became more and more clear. Full of roughness and violence, with a layered appearance, missiles are mounted on the wide dragon racks on both sides, and the double-barreled cannons under the nose all show the extremely powerful firepower. And under the two helicopters, there are two artillery pieces hanging. These two helicopters are naturally the Mi-24 hind-armed helicopters, which were built by Chen Yuyan, so to speak. Even if he gets 100 points a day, it would be too much for the consumption of points. He can only build two, but he also built them early, covered them with canvas and placed them on the lifting platform at the entrance of the 111 shelter behind the shelter hill. Because the conflict with the Brotherhood of Steel was foreseeable a long time ago, with the help of Chen Yuyan, the volunteer army possessed a large number of cutting-edge weapons and equipment. Even in the past, the Brotherhood of Steel would never tolerate it. Not to mention that during the Battle of Bunker Hill, they teamed up with Undercover Knight from the Academy to bloody the fraternity once. So he is already preparing for combat with the power armor of the Brotherhood of Steel and the Pridewind airship as the imaginary enemy. The weaponry of the two Mi-24 hind helicopters built this time has also been adjusted. Two sets of quadruple-mounted 9M114 anti-tank missiles, two sets of dual-mounted AA-11 shooter air-to-air missiles, and two sets of UB/V-32 rocket launchers are respectively mounted on the 6 hanging points of the payload rack. Equivalent to each helicopter equipped with 4 air-to-air missiles, 8 anti-tank missiles and 64 rockets. Coupled with the dual-mounted 30mm caliber cannons installed under the nose, the helicopter's firepower has reached the extreme. Only two Mi-24 helicopters began to descend, put down the two hanging LG-1 light howitzers, and then 12 independent regiment fighters wearing various types of power armor came down from the cabin of the plane. These power armors were found by the volunteers in the process of cleaning up marauders and super mutants. The sky in the apocalypse is very clean. Now, in addition to the air power of the Brotherhood of Steel, there are two more black shadows, which are naturally very obvious. The Pridewind also detected the existence of two Mi-24 armed helicopters, and the formation of the flying bird helicopters surrounding the airship also began to change, and they were on guard in this direction. At this time, a few white rays of light appeared nearby, and 4 Academy scientists wearing protective suits appeared here through molecular teleportation, and then they began to install additional targeting and positioning equipment on the two LG-1 light howitzers. Is it feasible to attack air targets with howitzers? In the control center of the Academy, Justin Eyre looked at the screen with great interest. He was the director of the synthetic recycling department and was also the commander of all military operations at the Academy before Knight's arrival, so he was sensitive to this aspect. Normally, it won't work, but if you have the help of advanced ranging instruments on your side, and then send the data to the Master of Mechanics, let her central computer do the calculations. Then attack a huge 300-meter-long air fortress, should still be sure. Chen Yuyan said. Leave it to me without worry. The central computer used in my base was left by the Rocco Company before the war. It is operated with more than 20 groups of brain-controlled robots, which not only have the computing power of computers, but also have human logic. Thinking ability. The mechanical master said vigorously with his hands on his hips. In other words, what does it mean that the computing power is not as good as a simple computer, and the logical thinking ability is not as good as a simple human brain? A scientist who has bald and turned into a Mediterranean sarcastically said. He's Alan Benny of the Academy's robotics department. You don't know anything about the magic of the brain-controlled robot project that Rocco cooperated with the US government before the war. The mechanic master ignored him, went straight to the console, and quickly operated it. Alan Benny is also an expert in this field. When he saw the data entered by the master of mechanics, he immediately frowned and muttered to himself, "You can still do this. You are simply a genius in robotics. Can I see the information on your central computer?" The mechanic master was busy, and just clicked the button casually to create a small piece on the screen. Alan Benny saw that it was the image data of the central computer. I saw the huge mainframe like a circular wall, and more than 20 groups of brain-controlled robots fixed on the mainframe. There is a keyboard in front of those brain-controlled robots, and their mechanical arms are typing at a speed that is difficult for ordinary people. Countless data are input and the calculation is completed in an instant, and then a new round of calculations is performed based on the calculation results. Alan Benny was stunned. He thought that the guy in the poor quality costume was just a late-stage secondary illness, but now it seems that she really has the real stuff. And maybe stronger than yourself. May I join in the research? Alan made a request that made him blush a little. As long as Boss Yan says it's okay, then of course it's okay. The mechanic master said indifferently, actually, these brain-controlled robots have made serious logical errors before, and I just need to change my mind and start over. If anyone is willing to come, it would be best to help. Yes, help me deal with the set of recursive fuzzy neural network adaptive functions. I need to use the set of functions to enable the central computer to predict the flight trajectory of the airship. Oh, okay. Alan was a little dazed, but immediately pulled over a computer and started calculating. Chun Yuyan also got through the communication and said, "Preston, it will take at least an hour for our artillery positions to accurately fire on the airship. You need to stop the Brotherhood of Steel at all costs. You can't let they drop the nuke in the castle." On the other side of the castle, Preston said firmly, "Don't worry. Even if I risk my life, I will never let the Brotherhood of Steel destroy the castle." Putting down the communicator, Preston looked at more than a dozen soldiers beside him. They were installing a large mortar with the help of several NS-4 civilian robots. This mortar was left here by the volunteers 40 years ago. Down. But to get it working again, it needs to be fixed. Without saying a word, Preston walked over and picked up a heavy cast iron part with all his strength, and walked towards the gun mount. There were still many unpolished places on the heavy parts, and his palm was scratched with blood. After an NS-4 robot installed the parts in its hand, it immediately came over to help. "General Preston. The Brotherhood of Steel is now exchanging fire with the Iron Gang near Hubili Comics. After passing the Iron Gang, there are no big predators and super mutant strongholds there." The soldier ran over and said. Preston smiled wryly, "I never thought that I would regret that we wiped out the predators around us so cleanly." Then he said sternly, "Boss Yan is organizing an army behind the Brotherhood of Steel. They are doomed to fail when they are attacked. But don't forget that the castle is our foundation. It is the symbol of the volunteer army. The spirit lives on forever." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 403. 397, Blocking War, Part 1. The spirit lasts forever. Whoa whoa. Long live the volunteer army. For the freedom and justice of the Federation. The volunteer soldiers around shouted loudly. Preston also took advantage of the opportunity and raised the old laser Mauser in his hand, and said loudly, "The Brotherhood of Steel has betrayed their purpose. They have trampled on their oath. And now, we will put they are completely driven out of the Federation. After today's battle, the Brotherhood of Steel will no longer exist on the Federation's soil. Destroy the Brotherhood of Steel. Destroy the power. The morale of the volunteer soldiers gradually increased. Preston acted immediately. He asked 2 of the second-generation synthetics to lead 21st-generation synthetics to deploy defenses in the direction of Andrews Station. Supreme uses nukes. He then led the teams himself, setting up a first line of defense around the South Boston Police Department and then a second line around South Boston High School. At the same time, near the large nuclear fusion plant, the huge shadow of the Pridewin airship slowly flew by, and on the ground, a terrifying army was advancing. Led by the giant 40-foot, 12.19-meter, robot Liberty Prime, more than 100 Brotherhood of Steel fighters are trotting forward. In this army, there are about 40 people wearing T-60 power armor, and most of the others are subordinates and clerks who have not yet completed combat training, but even so, their morale is still high. Driven by the emotion of vengeance, every Brotherhood fighter's eyes were bloodshot and red. They want to use the blood of the volunteers to wash away all the shame that the Brotherhood of Steel has suffered before. Deceit, failure, conspiracy, and the missing great elder Maxon. Read Dictionary Database, Entry, Democracy, a form of government in which leaders are elected and everyone has equal power. Liberty Supreme is still shouting slogans in that specially recorded impassioned voice, boom. It punched down, smashed a building in its way to rubble, and continued on its way. Read the Dictionary Database, Entry, Yang-Yuoism, a form of government in which the state controls everything and the people are deprived of their liberty. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. In the ruins of a park ahead, shots were fired at Liberty Supreme. Huge airships in the sky and giant robots on the ground, this terrifying lineup is gradually approaching, but those totally brainless super mutants and stimulant-crazed predators don't care about it at all. This burst of gunfire had no effect. Some bullets still hit several Brotherhood fighters wearing power armor, but they also failed to penetrate. But it succeeded in attracting Liberty Supreme's attention. American casualties, unacceptable. Authorize the use of overkill protocols. As the Liberty Supreme said, he took a Mk-28 nuclear bomb from the frame behind him with his backhand, and threw it over at once. Get out of the way. The Brotherhood fighters yelled, and they fell to the ground one after another. Boom. The nuclear bomb exploded, and the violent explosion shockwave spread instantly, and the buildings around the square collapsed in the explosion. An old nearby building that marked the Boston Public Library also collapsed. Only a broken American flag hanging on the building was also ignited in the radiation of the explosion, and it was slowly falling down while burning. There is no doubt that in this burst of explosions, those who fired were also swept away. I am Liberty Supreme, I am America. The threat was cleared, and Liberty Supreme began to turn around and move on. However, just as it turned around, it heard a terrifying roar, and saw a huge super mutant crawling up from a lake in the center of the square. It was bigger than other giant super mutants. Compared with any super mutants he has seen before, he is not at the same level as the muscles on his body. I only saw that the super mutant was at least 7 or 8 meters tall, very strong, holding a huge anchor, and tied a swan-shaped cruise ship to his body, which seemed quite joyful. However, it didn't wear many metal objects like other super mutants, obviously very satisfied with the strength of its physical body. Swan. The super mutant roared, waving the anchor and swooping towards Liberty Supreme. When, with a loud noise, the anchor smashed hard on Liberty Supreme's chest armor, and the huge force actually knocked Liberty Supreme back a step. Detected the target of the Yan Kingdom, and executed Order No. 7395. Destroy the Yankuoists. As Liberty Supreme spoke, a terrifying laser beam was emitted from its one eye. The super mutant had already dodged, the laser beam swept across the ground, and a trace of melted magma instantly appeared on the ground, and even the lake where the super mutant got up began to boil, and a large amount of water mist moved towards it. Diffuse around. Swan! Roared the super mutant, smashing the Liberty Prime with his giant anchor. But the rusty anchor quickly deformed and twisted when it hit the Liberty Supreme's solid armor. At this time, the bird helicopter in the sky had already started to lower its altitude, shooting wildly at the super mutants. And the Brotherhood of Steel fighters on the ground also rushed up to shoot. Numerous bullets hit the super mutant's body, and his flesh and blood were all bloody. But it stubbornly resisted the attack, became more and more angry, dropped the anchor and rushed forward, hugged Liberty Supreme's arm and tried its best to shake it, even biting it with its teeth. Liberty Supreme shook it twice but failed to shake it off. The power of the super mutant is extraordinary. If it was a tank here, it would have been demolished by it long ago. Liberty Prime fired the eye laser again, but still failed to hit the super mutant who was in a blind spot. It punched the super mutant a few times with its other hand. Although it spat blood, it still failed to knock it down. Hurrah! RRR! Liberty Supreme's arm hugged by the super mutant began to shoot out a large number of electric sparks. Under the movement of huge force, this arm had already started to suffer a lot of damage. At this time, Liberty Supreme made a move that terrified everyone. It backhanded out a nuclear bomb from the box behind it. Seeing this scene, the soldiers of the Brotherhood of Steel almost collapsed. They were speeding up and rushing forward to cover Liberty Supreme just now, but now they are running away at twice the speed. Boom! Liberty Supreme threw the nuclear bomb directly at his feet. A mushroom cloud tens of meters high suddenly rose, and the high temperature, radiation, and shock waves generated by the explosion spread instantly. Several Brotherhood of Steel fighters who ran a little slower were also swept up by the explosion, and they were blown out. There were also 2 Asuka helicopters in the sky that were hit by seedlings and fell down while spinning. In the midst of the terrible nuclear explosion, Liberty Supreme stands tall, and even bathed in flames, it looks even more invincible. The super mutant was hit by a nuclear bomb at almost zero distance, it was limp on the ground, it was not dead yet, but it didn't have the strength to stand up again. Democracy is truth, and nationalism is death. Liberty Supreme bent down and punched down with his intact arm. Countless blood splattered, splashing on its fists, chest, and all over its body. The Liberty Master continued to advance, but the soldiers of the Brotherhood of Steel, and even the airship Pridewind in the sky couldn't help pulling away from it. After crossing a bridge, the buildings began to gather again, and at this moment, in the midst of a messy building, dozens of light blue laser beams were suddenly emitted, and they were synthetic humans. Liberty Supreme was not polite, and a laser beam was fired back, but it only destroyed a row of buildings, and those synthetics had already hid in the Andrew subway station. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 404. 398 Blocking War, Medium. It's a synthetic human. The volunteer army really colluded with the Academy. Seeing the very unique light blue laser light, the eyes of Inspector Ingram, who hung far behind Liberty Supreme, radiated an angry light. Don't worry about these things anymore. Today is the end of the volunteer army. Superintendent Kunlun smiled lightly. Then what about the 2 helicopters that appeared on the other side of the river behind us? Inspector Tegan asked. Don't worry about it, I've already arranged for 5 Asuka helicopters to guard in that direction. If they dare to come over, they will die. Paladin Glade looked at the 2 helicopters that had been hovering but did not move forward. Said the helicopter. Inspector Ingram picked up the binoculars to check for a while, and said with some uncertainty, I still can't see it clearly, but it should be a pre-war helicopter, and it has a dragon mount. It is an armed helicopter. Our flying bird helicopter is probably no match. Glade's eyes flashed with gloom. Where did the volunteer army find so many pre-war technological items? This is absolutely not allowed. They must be completely eradicated. Bang! Liberty Supreme smashed down an abandoned building with a slap of his intact hand, and then aimed a laser eye in the direction of the synthetic man. The red laser beam swept across the ground, and the place where it passed was a sea of flames. However, only a few synths were destroyed by the laser, and the others got into the interior of the Andrew subway station. The sneak attack of the Red invaders will never succeed. Liberty Supreme said, and fired the laser beam again, this time directly shining on the top of the subway station. The extremely high temperature began to spread, the surrounding wood began to burn, the steel began to melt, and even the concrete began to show signs of melting. The irradiation of the laser beam lasted for a full minute, and the entire entrance of the subway station was surrounded by flames, and the scene was like hell. But the synths hiding in Tibet are still shooting in the corner deep in the subway station. Liberty Supreme took out a nuclear bomb again, this time throwing it directly into the subway station. Boom! The nuclear bomb exploded underground, and a huge bulge rose up from the surface in an instant, and the buildings on it shattered and collapsed like building blocks. Immediately afterwards, the huge bulge collapsed, and the subway station collapsed completely. A large pit with a diameter of 100 or 200 meters appeared on the ground, with a sea of flames in the middle. The synthetic humans deployed here were basically wiped out by this nuclear bomb, and only a few synthetic humans deployed on the ground were still stubbornly resisting. However, these scattered synthetic humans were quickly wiped out by the flying bird helicopters in the sky. Above the Federation, there is almost no force that can resist the advance of the Liberty Supreme. How many nuclear bombs does Liberty Supreme have? Chen Yuyan asked in the Academy's control center. A scientist next to him controls the drone to venture close to the Liberty Supreme to take pictures. The drone circles behind the Liberty Supreme to observe the number of nuclear bombs in the back basket. But soon the drone was discovered, and the flying bird helicopters guarding around aimed at the drone and fired a burst of shots, smashing the drone into pieces. There are at least 4 nuclear bombs. The scientists still saw the Mk-28 nuclear bomb in the back basket before the drone was destroyed. Chen Yuyan looked at the screen. You must not let Liberty Supreme approach the castle. If Liberty Supreme's nuclear bomb causes large-scale casualties among civilians, the Federation will be shrouded in shadow again. Not only will the Brotherhood of Steel completely lose popular support, but the volunteer army will no longer be defeated by the people. Believe that the order we have worked so hard to establish will once again be replaced by chaos and disorder. Sean was half lying on the wheelchair, and said slowly, the Brotherhood of Steel dispatched this large robot in the capital area 10 years ago. It was called Liberty King Kong at that time, to attack the Enclave organization. Although they succeeded in destroying the Enclave, but the Liberty Kong is still being destroyed by space-based weapons fired by the Enclave. We have collected information on this. Space-based weapons can be destroyed. No wonder it dares to throw nuclear bombs like Mk-28 directly at its feet. Chen Yuyan said while rubbing his chin. You don't seem to be worried at all. With all due respect, even if you find 2 pre-war gunships, it is impossible to destroy Liberty Supreme with this firepower. Moreover, Liberty Supreme should use a relatively elementary the nuclear fusion engine, so the beryllium oscillator is needed. Even if there is no nuclear bomb, its laser weapon can still fight for a long time. Xiao En said. Chen Yuyan just looked at the screen, and the screen had switched to a shooting angle of a flying high drone. He said, why should I destroy Liberty Supreme? My purpose is to consume its nuclear bomb so that it cannot just cause more damage. He glanced back at Sean. Don't forget, our goal is to defeat the Brotherhood of Steel, and Liberty Supreme is just a weapon of the Brotherhood of Steel, but not the Brotherhood itself. So you want to? Sean also thought of something. That's right. I will launch an attack on the Pride after consuming Liberty Supreme's nuclear bombs. I don't believe how strong an airship can be. Chun Yuyan said. I can also kill this big robot. Yi said loudly beside him. Chun Yuyan shook his head. You can't deal with Liberty Supreme at the moment, it doesn't agree with the owner who threw nuclear bombs at his feet, it's too dangerous. But even this is a choice to survive in a desperate situation. It will definitely not be easy. Chun Yuyan's face was serious. At this time, near the South Boston police station, whoosh boom. A rocket exploded on Liberty Supreme, and at the same time, a team of more than a dozen garbage robots and swarm robots attacked Liberty Supreme. And in the surrounding buildings, volunteer soldiers armed with rockets and sniper rifles opened fire on Brotherhood of Steel in groups of 2. It's from the volunteer army. Go up and kill them. Paladin Glade said loudly. No. If Liberty Supreme continues to use nuclear bombs, our own losses will be even greater. Inspector Quinlan immediately objected. Then don't let it use a nuclear bomb. Inspector Ingram nodded and said, the resistance of the volunteer army is very weak now, and it is enough to destroy them without nuclear bombs. I will temporarily close the agreement on the use of nuclear bombs by Liberty Supreme. As she spoke, she took out the computer and started to operate it. The nuclear bomb agreement is temporarily closed, and the laser of democracy will surely burn out the evil red invaders. Liberty Supreme immediately stopped holding the nuclear bomb behind him, his head began to turn, and his body suddenly leaned forward. Hey! A thick red laser was fired instantly, splitting the building in front into 2. Invincible! The soldiers of the Brotherhood of Steel yelled slogans and rushed forward. Da-da-da, da-da-da. The bullets and lasers suddenly became dense, and the first batch of robots that came over were all destroyed immediately. Robots don't use nuclear bombs anymore. Let's go too. A volunteer captain shouted. Kill. The volunteer army hiding in the rear also charged towards them with red eyes. Along with them, there are also a large number of robots of mechanical masters. The three-legged mechanism wheel of an assembly-level tank robot rolled rapidly, and at the same time, the 2 3-barreled machine guns installed on the upper body tilted a large number of bullets, hitting the Brotherhood fighters' T-60 power armor with a clang.